We thank you very much for joining us today. As we were kind of saying, everything is obviously very odd right now with what's going on in the world, and we hope to have the chance to talk to you a little bit about the current state of the industry and also dive into a little bit as to what's possibly going on in our very immediate future. So we're going to talk a little bit about just kind of lay of the land for you. This webinar is entitled Your Streaming Footprint in Uncertain Times and Circumstances. The original goal of this webinar was to take a look at some unique productions put on specifically by Imry Halevi and Harvard and his team around rowing, skiing. We will still continue to do that, and that will be the crux of the webinar today. But we certainly want to open up talking a little bit of kind of about what's going on in the world today right now and how it's impacting how we create content and what is kind of going on here. Janelle and Imry are there. If you guys can turn on your cameras and microphones, we'll welcome you to the webinar here as well. We're joined on the show today by Imry Halevi. He's Assistant Director of Athletics for Multimedia and Production at Harvard University, and by Janelle Fleming, who is Director of Sales and Sales Group Manager for Sports at LiveU. Both of you, how are you doing today? It's great to see you.
Good to be here.
Good to be here as well. Great to see you.
As I was saying when I was talking, and I did not have my microphone on like an idiot, we at SVG obviously all hope that you and the audience are doing well, that you are safe, that you are healthy, that you are washing your hands on a regular basis, and that you are reducing your interactions with anyone out there in the world. You know, it's all good to go with their hand sanitizer. Great. We're going to kind of start this conversation on kind of what's going on now and how what's going on with coronavirus and all this cancellation of sports is a huge bummer. A lot of you in the audience probably wish you were doing something else right now, and we wish you were too. You probably wish you were out planning for some kind of winter championship event or an NBA game or an NHL game or getting ready for the start of the baseball season. Look, no, we love watching what all of you do on a regular basis. So we understand that you wish you were somewhere else, but hey, as long as we're all cooped up, it's nice to kind of get us all together. Well, all right, so let's get started here. I appreciate both of you sticking with us and joining us here today. Imry, wanted to start with you, and a lot of what we're going to talk about maybe for the next 10 to 20 minutes about how this is impacting the world. You know that I obviously don't, no one expects you to have all the answers, since this is obviously uncharted territory for everyone. But if you could you walk us through real quickly what the last week was like for you guys? It's fitting that we have someone from the Ivy League on here because, 7 or 8 days ago, people were looking at the Ivy League with a side eye going, boy, you guys canceled stuff very quick. You were basically the first ones out there. And now it's obvious that you guys were on the forefront of something. Even before the NBA was canceling things, the Ivy League was right out in front making this happen. So tell us a little bit about what the week was like for you and how you guys have had to adjust both internally at Harvard and maybe with your colleagues.
Well, just like everyone, it's been a crazy week, and it's tough to even think back to what we were doing at this time last week. It seems so remote, but the way the conversations have been going and the way the conversations were going the week before and 2 weeks ago, we're all about mission. Our mission in the Ivy League and a mission at Harvard and the mission for many colleges begins and ends with the health and safety of student athletes. That's what it's all about. And if we keep that at the forefront, if we keep that in our minds when we plan and when we make decisions, then we should be fine. And so that's what we were thinking about as this whole thing was developing. It was, how do we make sure our student athletes are safe, that our fans are safe, that we provide a good competitive environment for everyone, and how can we tailor our decisions to make sure that situation is appropriate. And so I'm not going to go into any kind of internal discussions or anything like that. And if you've been following the news, you know that we started by canceling the Ivy League basketball tournament that Harvard was supposed to be hosting this year, and then continued on with canceling the rest of our winter and spring seasons. And since then, it's really been work on a couple of fronts. Number one is making sure that all our partners from LiveU to ESPN to many, many others know what's going on, that we're not leaving them in the dark, that if we no longer have games this year, is there certain equipment we need to return, certain rentals or leases we need to suspend, certain schedules we need to update.
Stories on. When you open things up to an event like rowing, when you guys first started doing that, take us through what your workflow looks like now for a rowing event, and then we can even take a look at what some of your productions look like at the end of the day. But start off with what setting it up an event looks like.
Sure. So we've been streaming rowing for a while, and we've always been looking for ways to make the productions better and more interesting. Historically, we've had a camera on a launch, which is a motorboat, following along with the races and having the entire production basically be on the launch, having a computer there with a 4G hotspot and commentators and a camera and everything, which is tricky because A, you're on a boat, B, if it's raining or even a little drizzling, that's not good. Also, you're limited to one camera. And so a couple of years ago, we decided to try to expand it a little bit more and move the production. Let's start. There we go. These are some photos from the recent Ivy League rowing championship we did. We incorporated a drone. So this is a picture of a drone with a LiveU pack. So the LiveU pack was connected to the drone controller, and that got back to our central control room. We also had a camera at the start line connected to a LiveU pack. You probably can't see my mouse, but my mouse is circling around the LiveU pack on the bottom right. Point-to-point communication or having fiber, wireless, or anything like that's not bonded cellular was a challenge. We tried to do it over the years, and it wasn't really that successful. And so using something that just goes to space or goes to cell towers and comes back to us was much, much better. Here's a screenshot of a production. You can see the drone shot. It's another one here. There we go. That's skiing. So we'll stop that there. And I have a video of rowing thing. So I'm going to play a few seconds of the video with audio, and then we can chat again.
Princeton, Yale, Harvard, Radcliffe, and Brown furthest left. Out of the chute, it shouldn't surprise to hear that Princeton has taken the slight early lead. That has been a key to their success today. They've gotten out to very good starts and built leads in the opening 500 meters. Princeton is there, but Brown is right with them, furthest outside, separated by the Yale and Harvard Radcliffe boats. Princeton and Brown, your top two. Then it looks like Yale in third, Harvard Radcliffe fourth. Penn sitting in fifth, and Cornell in sixth. Brown on the outside, their coxswain Stacy Newell has a lot of experience here. A lot of names that are familiar if you followed the Ivy Championships over the past few years. Their stroke is Andrea Bernhardt, seat 7, Tessa Mackey, Serena Irwin in seat 6, all with a lot of experience, along with Sophia Mason, Mira Parker, Lamore Dabrowski, Beat Kaz, and Eloise Baker. They're hanging around, but Princeton and Yale have both gained some ground. Yale up to second now, Princeton still leading. Bulldogs, a young team. They only brought back 3 from their second varsity last year, and Yale with 3 first years in this.
At this point in the webinar, Imry shifts gears to address how he and his team broadcast the first ever Harvard Ski Carnival. Imry takes you from there.
Came to me and said that they're going to be hosting a ski carnival, the first ever Harvard Ski Carnival in the 84-year history of our program, and they were wondering if we could do anything to produce it. It's different from rowing. Rowing, A, we have experience with, and B, lots of people do rowing, so I could talk to a lot of people. Excuse me, but skiing, very few people did. And the Olympics obviously does skiing, and NCAA championships, but not many more. And so it took a lot of planning with our coaches to figure out where to place cameras and how to cover alpine skiing, which is downhill, versus Nordic skiing, which is cross country. And working with Janelle and her staff on connectivity, we had to go to mountains and do connectivity tests and figure out what's going on there. People. And be very, very worried about the equipment. We got lots and lots of hand warmers, and we put them everywhere, on the cameras, on the tripods, inside the LiveU, around the LiveU, on the batteries, just to make sure everything still worked. This next picture was same guy, Charlie, operating the drone for our cross country for the Nordic skiing. and we were worried the drone was just going to fall out of the sky because it was so cold, but it didn't. So let's see that. And here is Austin from my crew with a polar cover for his camera, covering the races as well. And let me run a quick video of that.
Sure.
Here we go.
Building towards.
So this is alpine skiing.
Competing for the prizes.
I can talk over it. You can see stats on the bottom, the time for the people skiing. You can hear our commentator. And so for this alpine skiing, we had 4 cameras positioned along the course. And that's it over there, really. The rest of this was done out of our basketball control room back in Boston. We had our 4 cameras coming back, all using LiveU, and we had our commentator back in the control room. And results were coming into our control room. So we integrated everything into the control room with graphics and replays. We had a sideline reporter on site over there, and his feed was getting back in the control room. So everything was done remotely, which I appreciated because it was nice and warm in the control room. But also it was much more reliable.
Through those gates, gets his head toward the finish and has himself a 49.47 in run number 2. That's 3rd best off the mountain. Andrew Miller drops in. That mighty Dartmouth Big Green team. Last year, Dartmouth and UVM were the top performers across the EISA circuit. Don Dwyer, the men's head coach for the Dartmouth Big Green. Majority of these skiers already with U.S. national team experience under their belts. Miller, the senior, pressing toward the bottom of the hill. And comes in at 48.59.
Okay, so I think that's a brief overview of R2 Productions, the rowing and the skiing.
Okay, great, very cool. Some elements of it that I definitely wanted to follow up with you on it. Obviously we're here to talk about technology, but coordinating this. Let's talk specifically about skiing. Obviously, this was something that the skiing team came to you and asked if you could do. I'm sure your initial reaction is always, this is something I'm going to figure out. But was there any part of you that was like, I don't know, probably not? I don't know. When did this go from something crazy in your head to, you know what, maybe we've got the tools where we could do this?
Well, it varies. I like to think I have a sense of what is something that's very, very difficult, but we'll be able to figure it out or throw a little bit of money at it and figure it out. And what's so difficult or so challenging that it's not even going to be worth it. And so with the skiing coaches, once they sat down and gave me their idea, I didn't let them go before they provided more information, before we sat down on a trail map and said, okay, this is where cameras could go and this is what we're picturing. And it seemed realistic to me. It seemed like if we could figure out connectivity, that the overall logistics wouldn't be too difficult. Mm-hmm. I stayed back in Boston again, so easy for me. But Charlie from my team, who I showed in the pictures before, he was in charge on site. And so he was able to coordinate with the people at the mountain for the alpine skiing or the course for Nordic skiing, be able to get support to help them bring equipment up with anything that they needed, and coordinate camera locations. Because it was so incredibly cold, they had to change the course a little bit for alpine I believe they were going to do a longer course, and they made it slightly shorter. For Nordic, they actually moved their location. We were supposed to be somewhere in southern New Hampshire, where we had a site visit, and it was great and lots of connectivity. And then because even though it was super cold that day, the week before, it was 40 degrees and all the snow had melted. And so they had to move it to northern Vermont instead of southern New Hampshire, where there was no connectivity at all. And so we had to work with LiveU, and they were really great and shipped us a LiveU extender really quickly. And that helped us boost the signal a little bit. We had some Wi-Fi on site. So it was rough, but we were able to get something on the air. So I was happy about that, and I was able to let the coaches know ahead of time, hey, this might not be perfect because it's not something we're repeating. It's not like a hockey game where there are 40 a year and we figure it out throughout the year. This is a one-off thing.
Right.
We'll get something on the air.
Sure. Now, how did you handle communications between you and your team? Obviously, this is a huge factor for any kind of at-home production, but for you, it's especially unique circumstance. did you ever think about going on site, or did you know that you were going to stay back, and how confident did you feel, in the control room?
Well, the Alpine, we went on a site visit and we did testing with communications, which I'll talk about in a moment. So I was pretty confident. With Nordic, I wasn't confident. By then it was too late, and they had to go straight from Alpine to Nordic. It was the following day, and I was already in Boston. And we said, we'll just figure it out. Whatever it is, the worst case scenario is everyone assume you're live at all times, and we figure it out. Janelle and I have been talking for years about their products and how we use them, and Janelle has always been trying to get me to use LiveUs in other scenarios, not just rowing, which is great. And something that I've been telling LiveU, and I'm sure many others have been telling them, is that communications would be very helpful. That just sending a LiveU to the field with a person is not enough. We need to be able to talk to the person back and forth, or if talent is involved, having IFB so that talent can hear the studio. And so Janelle, she can comment. I don't even know if it's public right now, but
Go ahead. Yeah, you can
we got all our LiveU packs and our receiver upgraded to the newest firmware, which supported two-way communication, which is something we'd never done before. It took a little bit of work ahead of time to connect the LiveU two-way communication, which is 4-wire, to our ClearCom in the controller, which is 2-wire. But we did it, and especially in Alpine, it was great. People just plugged in their iPhone headphones to their LiveU packs, and that's it. They were on the air. We could talk. It was great. It really was no problem at all. Nordic was more challenging because if you don't have connectivity for video, you also don't have connectivity for communication, which is reasonable. And so we did what we could, but when there was connectivity with Alpine, communications through LiveU was great, and that's basically all we needed. Video through LiveU, audio through LiveU, communication. There was no other gear involved, which was great for us.
Okay. And Janelle, from your perspective, what was it like for you guys to be a part of this project, and in what ways were you able to support it?
No, this is exciting. I mean, this is sort of our mission statement when it comes to the college athletic market is sort of stream every sport. Like, it's possible, this is the solution to be able to adopt a different workflow that can be, replicated across multiple different sports. So Imry, of course, took this as a challenge and went all the way. But no, it was great. I mean, we learned a lot of lessons as well. So we've been waiting to have a good customer use our two-way communications, which is one of our software releases that he mentioned. And so it's in beta mode, and it worked great when when we got connectivity. So we loved that. And part of the at-home production, beauty of using LiveU is, you're sort of got 4 to 6 different video feeds on completely different networks, right? So when you're cutting a show, if one network, like especially with you guys were experiencing, where cellular modems maybe not in certain areas on the mountain, you could cut to a video feed that did have connectivity. So you got something on the air, you could cut a program from it. So having each one as sort of like an ISO backhaul actually was an advantage to using the LiveU versus sort of everything in one bundle or a mux and cutting it like that. So it was great. It was exciting to be a part of. So we're
cool.
great.
Yeah, that's awesome. Imry, without going too deep into your own personal thoughts here, anything that you would do differently that you think is relatively low-hanging fruit if you have to do this again, or do you hope you never have to do it again? I don't know.
So after we were done with this, and thank goodness it was after we were done with this, our coaches said, we're now in a rotation. I said, what does that mean? Well, every other year we'll be hosting a ski carnival. Oh, my goodness. Of course. That's good to keep for later. There are many things I would change. Simple things like camera locations. Also, trying to make sure that our site visits are at the site where we're actually going to be streaming from. I provided some feedback to LiveU, which they've always been great at receiving. One of the ones, and I can share that, it's technical, but on the LiveU pack, you have to start your stream so that the video starts coming back to the receiver, and that's when communication starts as well. And sometimes, when you're on a mountain and there are lots of fans and internet is not always great, sometimes the stream stops. But the person who's operating the camera doesn't notice that because there's no indication for them. And I see it, and I want to tell them on communications, hey, restart your stream or check your camera or something. But they can't hear me because the stream stopped, even though I can see that there's connectivity. And so my feedback is, hey, let's have comms always active or at a different level so that we can start-stop comms, but that doesn't affect start-stop for video. And so little things like that would help with the workflow, which is, why you send things on beta, because there are things you don't think of that when people use them on the field, that's what comes up.
Yep, absolutely. No, it was great. And we brought that to product team. So we're excited. It's good to see a sports application with our product like this and get that sort of feedback. And the more we're deploying this, the better feedback we're getting. And I have a slide deck of some of the stuff that we've rolled out this year based on customer feedback and what's needed in the solution. So
sure, yeah, Janelle, let's dive into that now, because this is an example of at home, Remy, whatever else anyone wants to call it, type of production. But there's obviously a bigger story even beyond that. It's an industry-wide phenomenon and theme that's occurring. So why don't we go through how LiveU technology kind of supports some of what's happening in that regard?
Yeah, absolutely. So we call it at-home production, but I mean, I will tailor it to whomever I'm talking to. So ESPN, it's Remy, Fox Sports, it's home run. So typical setup, as everybody here probably is aware of, right? It's sort of cabling from an IO panel to maybe a Sprinter van or a truck, depending on the size of the production, and everybody's in the truck, right? They're cutting the TDs, producers, replay operators, everybody's on site, which this works well in most of the college venues, right? Because sometimes they're just, all on campus. And sometimes this is a little bit of a legwork, right? Going somewhere where are you going to park the van? There's no cabling to an IO panel. How do I get all do I have to set up RF systems, blah, blah, blah. So I think our solution, I believe in it, that does solve for a lot of those sort of roadblocks that people come across when they're considering sort of evolving their workflow when it comes to production. So ours is pretty simple, right? It's wireless. It's got the bandwidth built in. For those listening that don't know about LiveU yet so far in this conversation, it's a portable video encoder with LTE 4G modems built in, providing enough network capacity to transmit a signal live, low latency, back to a server. That server could live, on the next state. It could live in another country. It's sort of limitless as far as where you can go. So part of us building out this solution is our LRT, which is our reliable transport. And not to get too salesy, but it's sort of our proprietary protocol that if you set the delay the same across all of our encoders, it arrives in sync within a few frames at the LiveU receive server. So you can truly cut between signal shots without that sort of buffer time. Now, how does this setup work? So sort of what I mentioned earlier, where we've sort of built out this product a little better over the years. We started actually with New England Sports Network doing their spring training games. We did it this past before everything happened. But we've done it for like 3 to 4 years, I would say. And a couple feedback, right? They really want tally in the field. They really want to see the program cut, right? The video return to the unit. Like Imry said, two-way comms has been on our roadmap for years. So we're starting to implement these solutions one by one. And I think this is going to be a continued case as we adopt more customers, get more feedback. So I put this diagram together just to show you guys a little bit of how it works, right? Everything is feeding into the LiveU system, the LU600. So it's telling you if you've got tally enabled when you're on air. You've got video return. Maybe if talent is on site, they want to speak to replays. They want to see the program cut. Maybe you're inserting certain graphics that they want to hear about and talk about, or if you're sending teleprompter too, right? These are all solutions that we've solved for. And then of course, two-way comms, which is still something that we're evolving, and I hope to have lots of good announcements soon, which should have been NAB, but we'll do it all digitally like we are now. So, the obvious things that people hear is it's cost effective. I actually think it provides more innovation than anything else, right? So oftentimes in the college space, we hear, we put the TriCaster in this press box. We only can fit 2 or 3 people in. It's very limiting space. How many people can set up a video switcher on site? So it limits the, availability of certain talent, especially in the college world where, sometimes that's limiting. So having everything centralized brings down the cost and the needed resources if you think about it, bringing that stuff to site. Cost sell is not always the best sell, but I think innovation is most important, right? So even in a certain venue where you only have certain fiber drops for fixed cameras, now you have the ability to have a roaming camera. They can go into the locker room. They can set up a drone. They can do all sorts of different things that make the end product more compelling and driving, fan engagement, alumni engagement. So I'll leave with this one. We have a great case study of this, aside from Harvard, which is also phenomenal. But University of Oklahoma, I mean, we were telling them years ago, I know you really just want to do golf, but there's so many more other sports that you can adopt. And they were considering sort of buying fiber into 2 or 3 venues, because that's what the budget, and that's sort of what they've heard all, their years, is that you got to install fiber, and that's how you can do REMI on campus. And we said, hey, like, there's going to be some times where one of your sports is going to be sort of the showcase sport, right? So you don't want to limit yourself to just the soccer field and the basketball court and the football arena. You've got all these resources, so why not use them to do more stuff? So thinking about it in that terms, and Brendan Meyer, one of our favorite customers, he sort of said, I like this quote, because it's, you think about the cost, and really, if you think about how much you can do, it's actually quite affordable. So, so that's my quick slides to walk you through. And obviously, always can answer questions. I'm here at home, so come keep me company and call me.
I think we're all welcome to having a little bit of interaction right now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, very cool. Yeah, thanks, Janelle. That's a really, really good look at what you guys are kind of doing to help support the at-home community. We do have a few questions starting to roll in from the audience that we can certainly start to address if you'd like. Imry, I'm thinking this one is for you. It's coming from our good friend John Kovacic down at UCF. Was kind of asking how NDI plays into this. You guys do a lot with NDI and IP at home in your control room. Was that an option at all? And what's the bandwidth difference when you're converting SDI or HDMI out of the camera? Were those things that you were tackling?
Sure. So no, NDI wasn't really an option because there was no hardwired internet, and NDI is a very, very bandwidth heavy. NDI HX, which is much more compressed, is easier, but there's really no, it's not built for bonded cellular. There isn't anything in the NDI technology that would allow us to split it up into multiple modems and send it up into the air and bring it back down. It's really meant for content sharing within a network. If you have 2, 3, 4 multiple control rooms, how can you share content between them? Or if you're remote, but on a similar network, a powerful network, and having some kind of VPN connection, you can share content like that. And so we use NDI all the time, but it's mostly for internal content sharing, and that's public. People see it. Most of the feeds they see on the air from us somehow go through NDI throughout the chain. But it's never for contribution like that. That's really remote from the field. It doesn't have that capacity.
And I apologize. You might have addressed this, but it looks like Kyle is asking just pure power. How did you deal with you're out there? Was it just really long extension cords? I mean, how are you getting power out there?
So one of our cameras, the one that you saw at the finish line with the guy with the goggles and covered up and everything, he was by the timing shack or timing booth, and so he did have power. But everyone else was powered off Anton Bauer gold mount batteries. We got little cables from LiveU that allow us to connect the batteries straight to the LiveU packs. So the LiveU packs have internal batteries that last for a couple of hours, though, negative 40 degrees, we didn't want to count on that. So we had several external batteries. We connected our cameras to external batteries, the external monitors to external batteries. Everything was basically running off Anton Bauer batteries across the board, and there was no problem at all. The Alpine event started, I think they started racing at 9, but we were out there at 7, and then it ended in the afternoon, maybe around 2, 3, or 4, and so it lasted the whole day with no issues.
Gotcha. All right. Well, as we kind of work our way towards the completion of the show here, I want to talk a little bit about the future, knowing very much that a lot of our futures are very uncertain at this point, and a lot of that is to kind of be determined. But speaking specifically about kind of at-home production and this kind of model generally, Janelle, you mentioned obviously, NAB has been postponed definitely, so that's messing with a lot of product cycles and launch announcements and things like that. But when you just look at this way of producing live events philosophically, how do you think this will continue to evolve? The things you've got great case studies of what's been done so far. Is it just going to be a matter of people believing in it more, and you'll just see more and more production like this? What else? How do you see this continuing to expand over the next year with the very fine print, obviously, in bold and text, that we don't really know when we might see sports again? But generally, how do you see this industry kind of approaching this more going forward?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a slow burn, the excitement of at-home production, which is understandable. I mean, we've done things a certain way for a number of years. When it works, it works. It's really when budget constraints and outside stressors start to breed innovation and creativity. So I think that we'll see people get a little bit more comfortable with doing things remotely in this situation that we're in right now. I think that, especially because when sports does come back, which it will, advertisement, we don't know where the economy will be. So I think we're going to see that budget constraint, unfortunately, continue. So I see it being adopted, but not just to save money. Also, I mean, if you notice, there's a ton of customers right now trying to find ways to get content. So esports is becoming a big sort of like idea now. I mean, it's been big for a while, but have players, when you're hearing from ESPN, these players playing these games and remotely grabbing cameras and seeing people and integrating into a production without even the players being on site is a cool concept to adopt. And with, all of this sort of gaming mentality where if you watch the Super Bowl, these AR and this cool graphic stuff they were doing, they're trying to, appeal to that younger crowd. So to keep innovating and keep making interesting content, I see this continuing. I mean, I've already seen pre-game shows and post-game shows with sports betting and legalizing sports betting becoming increasing. So a really cost-effective way to do a pre-game show without sending everything and getting a truck is at-home production. So it's not a high viewership, it's not big rights holders, but it's a good solution for that. So
for us, when I went to higher administration and told them about this, I mean, they don't care about technology. If I told them we're going to use bonded cellular and it's going to be great because it's going to integrate the SDI feed straight, they're like, understand, and they wouldn't have cared.
Just make the pictures show up, right?
Right. But if I tell them, hey, we're going to cover sports we've never covered before, and, we're talking about rowing and skiing now, and everything is canceled. But our plan for the spring was to use our LiveU packs to broadcast sailing and outdoor track, which would be first for us. And that's what they get excited about. And when I tell them, hey, it doesn't cost any more money. The control room exists. We have the LiveU receiver. We've leased the LU 600s for the year. I mean, we have them. It doesn't cost anything more. That's when they get excited. So that's been great for us. I just want to address one question. I saw a question come up from Terry. Did you use tally lights? That would have been nice, but it was so incredibly cold that no one could see anything. Everyone was 100% covered up, only looking at their camera and going back and forth. And the LiveU pack itself wasn't visible, and the cabling was minimal. So no, it would have been nice. But again, next year when it's beautiful and sunny and warm at the ski.
Agreed.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's really interesting stuff. Yeah. So he really almost had some guys kind of, so that made comms, I'm sure, even more critical because they were essentially flying blind in that circumstance.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, we're running towards the end here. Any final thoughts from either of you on kind of some of the topics that we're talking about here? Imry, any parting advice for anyone who might be looking to do something similar? There's only so many of us that participate in skiing, and you obviously produce more sports than anyone in the collegiate space, and some sports that most programs don't even have. You've done things like fencing and obviously the ones we've talked about here. But for someone who's looking to branch out and do something a little bit different, any advice from you?
Don't be afraid to try and to make mistakes. I mean, our productions are not perfect. I was showing the little clips of our videos before, and I could tear those apart. If I had more time here, I could tell you everything that I saw wrong in our own productions, which were the end of the season. It was after we had already had time to make everything better for rowing. And so making mistakes is fine. That's never a problem. What this technology allows you to do is try. And if you make mistakes, that's great. As long as you don't make the same mistake twice, you're going to learn and you're going to improve. And you know what? People watching from home really don't care. We talked to lots of parents and they said, this is amazing that you even got to watch something. If you had one camera at the finish line wide showing the mountain and our kids coming down, that would have been fine for us. Not to mention, of course, sideline reporters and multiple cameras and replays. And so they're just parents and fans, viewers are just happy with anything we can give them. So I would say, try it.
Cool. Janelle, what do you think? Any final thoughts for anyone? Any advice that you would give, having had experience at some of these case studies?
I mean, my final thoughts really are like, try before you buy. We do demos. So if you are trying to do something or you have an idea, I mean, we would love to hear it and work with you to accomplish that mission. I think we're fairly nimble and good partners. So, no idea is a bad idea. I would also just say, take the time now to, plan, right? So this is all going to come back. It's, we're lucky, like Imry was saying earlier. I mean, we're fortunate enough to still have jobs and whatever we can do to help people who are, suffering or things are going to get bad. I think we'll just try to stay optimistic and use hand sanitizer and get through it together.
Yes, we certainly will. Well, Imry and Janelle, thank you both so much for joining us and for sharing your expertise and these examples with us. We had a really good time. Thanks very much.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks so much.
And, for everyone in the audience, look, we could see the chat. We could tell that things were a little bit rough in the beginning there. So as Imry says, get out there and make mistakes. Apparently we're good at that. So
I was talking about other people, Brendan, not other
No, I knew that wasn't a jab. It's nice that things settled out. We will make this on demand available to everybody. Obviously, I will check the recording immediately as we get off. For those of you who stuck around, we really appreciate it. We hope you enjoyed the rest of the show. We will continue to do more of these, hopefully with, more success in the top, that's for sure. And, we'll make sure that we get out all of this great content that we talked about here with you today. So thanks for joining us. Imry, Janelle, thank you again. And from us at SVG, please stay safe. And we hope to talk to you very soon. Take care.
Thanks.